Mueller would argue that by reacting in the way that the United States does and other countries do to some extent, we are playing into the terrorist hands. We make terrorist attacks to be such a significant phenomenon and such an existential threat that we elevate the importance of these groups to a large extent when they don't do a whole lot of damage in the aggregate. They really just don't. But we make it seem like they're existential, so suddenly they have a lot more prestige than they did before. What I think is interesting, though, and something that's worth pondering is, why do leaders do that, right? I mean, I think something to think about is if we can establish, and we know as ordinary civilians or academics that this is not what leaders say it is, and that leaders shouldn't do this, and by doing that, they're playing into the terrorist hands. A question is, why would they do that if they have the exact same information? Why would any politician say that terrorists are a big deal when they have to know that they really aren't? And something you can find in research about terrorism, and in particular game theoretic models, is there's a strategic incentive on the part of leaders to do that for a lot of reasons. One, they can push their legislative agenda through if there's this perception of a threat, and they're seen as a strong leader that can get things done. Another thing that they can do is, if we look statistically in the aggregate, the vast majority of terrorist movements collapse, and collapse very quickly, usually after the first attack. So if I'm a strategic leader, and I know that the odds are in my favor that a group is going to collapse, and I know that I can make them out to be an existential threat that I've defeated, I have an incentive to do that. I have an incentive to make this group larger than it really is and say, I'm the one that defeated it. That's why you see this behavior. Even though it is suboptimal, it's politically expedient to do that, which is interesting. And that's something we can get by looking at these things scientifically versus just taking what's said at face value and assuming that these terrorists are sort of an existential threat in that way.